Among the treetops, the sun, long unseen in this area, shines through. Although the weather is changeable, taking on its extreme facets time and again, winter is coming to an end in the Central European lowlands. Life is smouldering in the lingering remains of the giants that once ruled here. In the natural forests, newts are waking up after cold months of hibernation. Amphibians, pioneers of life on land. During this period, the rise in temperature makes all amphibians' hearts beat faster. During the winter, their pulse contracted to an average of 4 times per minute, but now the heartbeats very slowly start to accelerate. Finally, it is possible to move. Now you just have to get to the water safely. This one has managed to reach the reservoir where it was born. Now, after gaining strength, it will be able to proceed to mating. Before this can happen, however, it is in for a remarkable metamorphosis. The first amphibians appeared in the Devonian, evolving from sarcopterygians whose bones were based on a skeleton via the shoulder and pelvic girdle. Their additional feature was the possession of lung sacs. This facilitated their ability to stay in shallow, intermittent bodies of water and allowed them to make short trips to land. Amphibians inhabit a variety of habitats, with most species living on land, in the ground, in trees, or in fresh water. Developmentally, they undergo a larval stage during which they have an aquatic lifestyle, although some exotic species have evolved adaptations to bypass this restriction. Tadpoles undergo a transformation whereby the gill-breathing larva becomes a lung-breathing adult. Gas exchange also occurs through the skin. Amphibians resemble reptiles, but unlike reptiles, they do not have amniotic membranes, so their development must take place in water. It is early March. In the fields, the meltwater is stagnating in the form of huge puddles. This aura does not prevent grass frogs from starting their mass migration from their wintering grounds for mating. In the floodplains, herons take advantage of the amphibian awakening by hunting unwary individuals. In the Tatras, part of the migration still takes place over the snow. The signal to start walking is a rise in temperature and rain, making it easy for the amphibians to move. Frogs are often accompanied on their journey by common toads. During amorous exaltation, there is the so-called amplexus, a grip with which the male holds the female. It often occurs while still on land. The spring migration is a spectacular show. In the ensuing commotion, there is often confusion between the species. Unfortunately, not all reach their destination. Every year, thousands of amphibians die on the roads during mating migrations, becoming food for scavengers. This is why campaigns are carried out in spring in the most vulnerable areas to reduce this slaughter. Signs inform drivers of the presence of amphibians, and when designing new roads, safe crossings for the small creatures are taken into account. Not everything always goes according to plan, but the end result is satisfactory. Grass frogs in temperate climates begin breeding as early as mid-March. This takes place in shallow, rapidly warming bodies of water. The males call the females with a sound resembling a quiet purr. Usually, many females lay their eggs in one place not far from the shore. The spawn is in the form of gelatinous spherical clusters, forming large interconnected masses together. This aggregation minimizes temperature fluctuations and protects against small predators, especially invertebrates and newts. In the shallow water, vegetation is taking off. Green shoots appear here and there, creating a colorful backdrop for the refined courtship. Like the grass frogs and the less common agile frogs, the moor frogs belong to the so-called brown frog group due to their coloration. But not today. The bridal coloration of the males can be startling. The bright blue frogs, making loud noises, congregate in the shallows among the flooded grasses and rushes. The male, holding the female in a grasp, releases sperm directly onto the deposited spawn. External fertilization occurs in the water outside the body and is similar in all native species of Anuran amphibians. The moor frogs are very cautious, reacting to any suspicious movement by taking cover and falling silent. The weather in April can be tricky. After a few warmer days, there is a sudden but short-lived return of winter. This should not harm the deposited spawn. Soon, spring will reign in all its majesty. During spring, common toads do not have an easy life. The males show a lot of aggression and fight fiercely with each other for access to the female. They prefer deeper and less overgrown places. During mating in males, nuptial pads appear on the toes of the forearms, serving to grasp the female during amplexus. Common toads have no particular requirements for a reservoir. If the water covers a larger area, they stick to the coastal zone. Female toads lay their eggs in strings and hang them up among the plants. A single string can be up to 5 meters long, and the number of eggs laid reaches several thousand. Sometimes the violent nature of the males can lead to death by drowning of one of the individuals, as is the case with this female. In all native amphibians, the mating period may fall at a different time in different areas, depending on climatic conditions and even the degree of shading of the reservoir. This is why mating may be over in one location, yet just starting in another, only a few kilometers away. The sun rises higher above the horizon with each passing day. The surface of the small reservoirs, not long ago resounding with the voices of hundreds of amphibians, is becoming quieter. Heaps of spawn and developing tadpoles are left over from the recent merrymaking. At the bottom of the reservoir, two mysterious figures crouch in an amorous embrace. Their vertically aligned pupils giving them a demonic appearance. They are common spadefoot toads. Both male and female make mating noises. However, their voices are quiet because they do not have resonance sacs, and the whole act takes place underwater. They choose various types of bodies of standing water as their egg-laying site. Mating males and females do not show themselves on the surface while in the water. They also do not congregate in one place like frogs, and their arrival in the tank, as well as the mating itself, is stretched out over time. It is April, and the newts have undergone an astonishing metamorphosis. Beautifully colored male smooth newts have a notched crest spanning the middle of the back and tail. Larger and less colorful great crested newts are sometimes found in large aggregations. They are very voracious and territorial. This male great-crested newt devours a male smooth newt. Fertilization is preceded by a courtship display. The male does not have a copulatory organ. He deposits the sperm packet in a casing into the water. The female picks it up and places it in the cloaca. In newts and salamanders, fertilization occurs inside the female's body. She lays the eggs singly or in small groups, wrapping them in the leaves of aquatic plants. In unfavorable conditions, the female may keep the eggs in the oviduct. It may take her several months to lay them. In mountainous areas, we can find related species of newts, alpine newts and Carpathian newts. They exhibit behavior similar to their lowland relatives. A legendary amphibian shrouded in mystery lives in the dark corners of mountain forests. The fire salamander. The fire lizard, as this mysterious animal was formerly called, is not a lizard. The myth of salamanders being born from fire probably originated from the sight of specimens escaping from stumps burnt in bonfires, in which these animals often hide. In spring, the female seeks out a stream or body of shallow water that is not too swift and gives birth to well-developed larvae. Alternatively, she gives birth to eggs from which the offspring hatch immediately after birth. This is ovoviviparity. Salamanders are typically forest animals living in a terrestrial environment. Their adult lifestyle does not include being in or even near water. Adult specimens swim poorly, resulting in frequent drowning in the event of floods or water surges. The Bieszczady Mountains. After recent rains, the ruts in this forest road have filled with water. Something is moving on the clay bottom. This perfectly camouflaged creature is a yellow-bellied toad. Male yellow-bellied toads make quiet but melodious sounds. They lead an eminently aquatic lifestyle. An important factor is the absence of other amphibians and their tadpoles, which could pose a threat to toad progeny. In the foothills of the Carpathian Mountains, together with the yellow-bellied toad, we can meet the fire-bellied toad. In places where their ranges overlap, in spite of different environmental preferences, hybrids may be formed with features of both species. The fire-bellied toad inhabits small to medium-sized bodies of water, usually in open countryside, so it is quite common in agricultural areas. During mating season, there is sometimes fierce competition between males. The male's voice is not very loud, but the chorus of hundreds of individuals, which usually perform from April to June, can be heard from up to several kilometers away. While making mating noises, they resonate with their whole body. A characteristic feature of toads is the coloration of the ventral side of the body. Small, irregular spots, usually red or orange, are arranged on a dark background. In the sunbathed leaves, a mysterious creature creeps. No insect within its sight can feel safe. The common tree frog spends most of its life on plants. It climbs deftly thanks to adaptations such as the clinging appendages on its toes and its flat body shape. As a result, it can even move on vertical surfaces. Only during the mating season does it descend into the water. As dusk falls, the males begin their choral singing. The voices of many individuals meld together, creating a distinctive, unforgettable atmosphere during warm nights. The most thermophilic of the native toads, the green toads and natterjack toads, are the latest to mating. Where the ranges of these species overlap, natural hybrids form. Natterjack toads and green toads have resonators at the bottom of their mouths to ensure adequate vocal strength. The mating voices of our amphibians, like that of the green toad, may remind the uninitiated listener of the voices of birds. In the natterjack toad, the mating season depends on heavy rainfall. It chooses shallow and sunny pools, usually devoid of vegetation, such as periodically flooded meadows, as its mating site. An interesting feature of the natterjack toad is its characteristic running. These amphibians do not jump. Larvae in anuran amphibians called tadpoles hatch from the eggs. They soon develop into adult amphibians, but before complete physical transformation, they present many characteristics typical of fish. Tadpoles do not resemble adults and congregate in shallow water, often reaching very high densities. They feed by straining organic particles from the water or by scraping them from plants and the substrate. Daphnia are an important component of the diet of young amphibians. These small arthropods are periodically found in huge numbers. By feeding on algae, they make a major contribution to the cleaning of water bodies. Their transparent bodies, on close approach, allow the action of certain internal organs to be observed. The development of the larvae of tailed and anuran amphibians is different. The larvae of tailed amphibians resemble the adult in appearance, whereas anurans are completely different in appearance from the adult forms. The mouthparts of the larvae of tailed amphibians are similar to those of the adult form, while those of tadpoles differ considerably in structure. The larvae of tailed amphibians breathe with external gills throughout their development. Tadpoles only in the early stages. Later, they already breathe with their inner gills. In the larvae of tailed amphibians, 2 pairs of limbs are visible, with the forelimbs developing first. In anuran amphibians, both pairs of limbs develop simultaneously, but only the hind limbs are visible, as the forelimbs are hidden in the gill chamber. Usually the larval forms are small, much smaller than the adult forms. An exception to this is the tadpole of the common spadefoot, which reaches a length of several centimeters and is much longer than the adult. There are substances in its skin that repel potential aggressors, as this heron has found out. The tadpole's tail, vertically surrounded by a fin, disappears during metamorphosis. The gills also disappear. The young frogs are small because after the transformation they additionally lose size. If they are lucky and survive, they will reach maturity in 2 to 3 years' time. Newt larvae absorb their gills and leave the water. However, the direction taken does not always turn out to be the right one. Amphibians usually avoid reservoirs with fish that may endanger their offspring. However, one species of ichthyofauna inhabits shallow, silted mudflats typical of amphibians. This is the swamp minnow, which is extremely rare in Europe today. Before spawning, the females have abdomens swollen with eggs. They function perfectly in such an environment, as their organisms have a low demand for dissolved oxygen in water. Among them, silver Prussian carp can also be seen dodging around. This is an invasive alien visitor to our fauna from Asia. It poses a threat to native species, displacing them from their natural habitats and contributing to the impoverishment of biodiversity. It's the end of spring. Who among us has not seen green frogs while being at the waterfront? The group of green frogs includes 3 species found in Poland: the pool frog, the marsh frog, and the edible frog. They are all strongly associated with the aquatic environment. Interestingly, the edible frog is a natural hybrid resulting from the interbreeding of the other green frog species. This process has been going on for several million years, and in many areas this frog is much more numerous than the original forms. In green frogs, the mating period occurs in late spring and early summer, later than in brown frogs. Male green frogs form choruses over the waters, emitting a distinctive mating voice in clusters, commonly known as the croak. This is amplified by the balloon-like inflated 2 vocal bladders located on the sides of the head. Summer. Kingfishers have taken up their breeding territory. These birds include all sorts of aquatic creatures in their diet. Among the most commonly caught fish, amphibians are also found. This frog has become an important part of the mating ritual of these birds. Amphibians are one of the important links in many food chains. From the egg stage through to the adult form, they are food for many animal species. Water is not a very friendly environment where almost everything wants to devour everything else. Tadpoles often end up as a snack for all sorts of predators. Their survival strategy lies in their large numbers. The situation is different for adult forms. Individual species must have developed a number of effective methods of defense in the course of evolution. Toads have well-developed glands that produce poisonous substances. When threatened, they secrete them. These have an irritating effect on the mucous membranes and also have a paralyzing effect on the attacker's heart. When threatened, the common toad hovers on its limbs and then inflates, making it appear much larger than it really is. Nevertheless, there are specialist connoisseurs who can handle such an arsenal. This is why toads prefer to stay hidden under stones, in burrows or cracks in walls during the day, and foraging after dark. Yellow-bellied or fire-bellied toads have specialized their defensive strategy even further. Disturbed on land, the toad assumes a warning position, the so-called toad reflex. It flexes and, bending its limbs, shows the brightly colored underside of its belly. The contrasting pattern is meant to warn a predator against consuming the amphibian, which is covered in an irritating and vomit-inducing secretion of the skin glands. The salamander also has repellent colors indicative of its poisonous properties. Its black skin covered with bright yellow spots is a warning. Not all amphibians have warning colors. Frogs and newts outside the mating season do not have very flashy colors. However, this does not mean that there are no irritants in their mucus. There are also glands located in the skin of the spadefoot toad from which garlic-smelling substances are secreted when disturbed. However, this is not its main line of defense. When alarmed, it does not try to flee, but quickly burrows into the ground. It is aided in its skillful burrowing by the ridges on its heels. One of the environmental adaptations of the common spadefoot toad, like toads, is the ability to put the body into a state of estivation. In extremely adverse conditions, in dry and hot summers, they can fall into a summer sleep that helps them to survive. All amphibians, even those with contrasting colors, are able to camouflage themselves very well in their environment. Green group frogs sitting motionless on the edge of a tank are practically invisible, while showing a great deal of variation in color as well as their body patterns. Brown frogs residing in a tangle of herbs and branches can only be betrayed by movement. Even a showy salamander in a deciduous forest streaked with sunlight is difficult to spot among the undergrowth and fallen leaves. The common tree frog is usually green in color, allowing it to hide among plants, but it can take on different shades of green. It is the middle of summer. This dragonfly larva was hunting tadpoles until recently. Now it is undergoing an astonishing transformation. Finally, it can stretch out its wings. The dragonfly will continue to lead a highwayman's life, but now it will catch its victims in the air. This toad's days are numbered. A toadfly has laid its eggs in its nostrils. Now the larvae developing there devour the amphibian from the inside. After a few days, the end comes. The death of one creature ensures the life of others. Scavengers quickly appear at the scene of the tragedy to complete the work of destruction. amphibians seem inconspicuous, but they make an enormous contribution to the circulation of matter. Tadpoles consume large quantities of phytoplankton, having a direct impact on water quality. Almost all adult forms of amphibians are predators. They feed on insects, annelids, and mollusks, which they actively hunt. They are undoubtedly allies of farmers and fruit growers, as crop pests are on their menu. Outgrown individuals show cannibalistic behavior. The largest native marsh frogs will also not disdain rodents and chicks. Toads are very voracious. As mainly nocturnal animals, they replace insectivorous birds that are sleeping at the time. Wyponomelta caterpillars have made their home in the trees. Sometimes unwary caterpillars fall off the branches. The frogs do not particularly like this average meal, but the toad is not picky. As bioenvironmental animals, amphibians are particularly vulnerable to environmental pollution. The decline in their numbers is indicative of the high level of contamination in the area. The grass frog is adversely affected by the use of pesticides and the drainage of the areas where it breeds. Just a few decades ago, wet meadows and even stubble fields were teeming with young brown frogs. Today, an encounter with a juvenile in these biotopes is rare. Added to this are climate changes which do not go unnoticed in amphibian breeding patterns, as well as the road network fragmenting the habitats. Dissolved salt used for road gritting in winter runs off into ditches and then into reservoirs where amphibians gather in spring. Thoughtlessly dumped rubbish sometimes turn out to be a trap with no way out. Recently, amphibian populations have also been decimated by fungal diseases. The fire-bellied toad is one of Europe's most rapidly declining amphibians. In Poland, it still occurs in many sites, but the population decline is pronounced. This is particularly true in agricultural areas where there are relatively many small reservoirs. However, they are rapidly becoming overgrown as a result of the inflow of excess nitrogen and phosphorus compounds from fields and are littered and polluted with pesticides and sewage. The cessation of grazing by cows, which previously functioned as natural mowers, has contributed to the overgrowth of breeding sites for toads and other amphibians. With all sorts of developments, many small ponds are buried to make matters worse even during the mating season. In climatic zones where thermal conditions change throughout the year, amphibians have to adapt their life cycle to them. They cannot obtain heat from their metabolism, so their body temperature is influenced by the environment. Amphibians go into a state of hibernation or prolonged numbness. This adaptation increases the animal's chances of survival during the winter cold. The state of hibernation can generate various threats, for example from predators. The cold-resistant grass frog overwinters in water buried in silt. It prefers flowing waters, gathering in large groups of up to several hundred individuals. Otters often use such groupings as natural larders, as overwintering amphibians are essentially defenseless. Despite the risks, hibernation is beneficial for amphibians. The energy balance comes out in favor, as energy requirements would not be met in the cold months. Of the domestic amphibian species, the grass frog, the marsh frog, and the edible frog overwinter in water. However, most native species spend this time on land, in a variety of hiding places, crevices under heaps of branches, in rock piles. Some species, such as the natterjack toad and the spadefoot toad, are able to bury themselves in the ground to considerable depths. They then stay below the frost level of the ground. Spadefoot toads sometimes use the burrows of barn swallows for overwintering. Toads also take up residence within farm buildings. They are often encountered in cellars. An important wintering site for amphibians is deadwood. It is eagerly used by newts and salamanders alike. In extremely convenient hiding places, many amphibians of different species can be found at the same time. Cold and snowless winters are particularly dangerous for amphibians wintering on land. In such harsh conditions, many of them die. For frogs overwintering in water, low temperatures are not a threat. What becomes dangerous in this case is a prolonged period of oxygen deficiency. Such a deficit arises in small bodies of water when the surface is covered with ice for an extended period of time, preventing the dissolution of atmospheric oxygen in the water. In extreme cases, this can lead to winter suffocation. Amphibians overwintering underwater conduct gas exchange exclusively through their well-vascularized skin. Metabolism is then muted to such an extent that this mode of respiration completely covers their energy requirements. Amphibians overwintering on the bottom of water bodies do not feed. Their digestive system regresses for the duration of overwintering. Sometimes the chosen wintering site becomes a death trap. This happens when the animals cannot get out of the hiding place they entered in the autumn. They often fall into unprotected drainage facilities. The warmer winters in recent years may have had an impact on amphibian declines. Previously awakened from their winter dormancy, they lose energy, with the result that some do not even live to see the mating season. Amphibians have fallen out of favor with the public and generally have a bad reputation. They are regarded as repulsive, nasty creatures, causing fear or disgust. This completely unfounded opinion has resulted in negative consequences and the thoughtless extermination of these animals. It's time to put a change to this, though. These creatures may be inconspicuous, but we should not overlook them. As predators, they have a significant influence on the shape of trophic networks and energy flows in ecosystems. Many predators on the higher levels of the food chain depend on amphibians as an important food source. Amphibians are beneficial animals from a human perspective, naturally controlling the abundance of animals considered by humans to be pests. Due to their sensitivity to changes in habitat conditions and the presence of toxic substances in the environment, they are used as indicator species, indicating the state of ecosystems. Some amphibians are edible and are eaten in France and the Far East, among other places. They have also rendered invaluable services to the development of medicine and pharmacy. A drastic decline in amphibian populations, involving the disappearance of entire populations and mass local extinctions, has been observed worldwide since the 1980s. A number of programs are being implemented in Poland's state forests to conserve these valuable animals. When small retention reservoirs are created, new breeding sites for these creatures are created. Valuable ecological sites are being maintained, which, without the help of foresters, are becoming overgrown. Special winter refuges, so-called hibernacula, are prepared for amphibians. These are excellent hiding places for amphibians as well as other animals, even during their normal activity period. Hopefully, these measures will have the intended effect and our nature will not lose its diversity. This will ensure that future generations will have the chance to coexist with these interesting creatures, which are among the vertebrates that pioneered life on land.